So recently I wrote an article and it's called What is Vibe Reporting? And the workflow of vibe reporting is really like in the way I understand it is like, for example, take Lovable. I've done, product ideas or website ideas, and you kind of can in the chat window kind of tell it what you're trying to do, upload some examples, and then it starts building that UI for you. Right? And that's essentially vibe coding, I guess they call it, right? And it just reminded me, like it clicked one day. And I was like, oh, the workflow I have here is pretty similar to that. And so I coined it vibe reporting. Before I jump into it, there's two pieces. One is like building the templates, which is reusable templates, and I'll get into that more in the course. And the other one is like taking that template and then essentially vibe reporting on top of it, specifically to the nuances or the outcomes or the things that you're trying to communicate for that upcoming meeting with different stakeholders. Right, so here's an example report. Actually, let me jump to this one. It's the final report. It's a month, month of a month review. There's an overview table, right? September, October, kind of what changed. Um, and then it just breaks it down by specific, just a product like motion. It also kind of talks about the trends over time, and then there's specific, call outs of what happened and contextualizing it to targets. And then there's also a forecast in here, right? So just to show you, this is a pretty cool month of a month. It kind of shows, what we did, what's working, in a very simple way, right? A very simple visual way, which I think is very important. What I've seen is that it's so much easier to communicate in this format than it is trying to, plug in data tables and then have like a bunch of bullets that you're trying to read through. The process really was, so this is essentially, think of it, you have a template and you're kind of adding these two components on top of it. But really, like, if you look at the steps that I took, was, initially creating that month of a month table. Here's a metric, like I had LPV, landing page views in there. It didn't make sense, so I removed it. Um, and then I just kind of had some notes on, what exactly I wanted to show. But then coming down to this one, I was like, hey, wait, I want to kind of show that, the cost per trial trend over time. And so you can see like there was an onboarding flow change that happened in early September that influenced that metric, right? Volume wise, it's going up. And then also there was a new creative launch where the cost, and that started bringing down the cost per start trial, right? And so you could just list that in bullets if you want, but this is a very easy way to kind of show the overlay. And like I said, hey, change this color. Like you can just kind of change it as you want. Like, hey, I want this to be a different color. Add in these changes with vertical lines. I also ask you to add in, I call it the ceiling, but it's like this. If we're below that ceiling, like we're in a really good place, right? So like just contextualizing the data to actual kind of targets that the business has. And then lastly, like this was more like, hey, like what's the forecast based on how we're trending, right? So I asked it to take the last 90 days of data. I think I asked it to factor in year via seasonality. Um, yeah, 2024 patterns. And it's kind of give like what the assumptions are that it made to forecast the next month. And you can kind of take that to really show like, okay, here's where we're headed, right? Uh, and so the workflow really looks like I have what I'm doing. I have Slack open. I'm in the ads manager. I'm doing whatever on this screen. And then I have a second monitor where I will pull up Claude. I'll say, hey, run, let's just say this is a template, run the template. It can take anywhere from like 60 seconds to like 2 minutes, which in today's world is forever, but not really because you're just running it real quick on the second monitor. And then it gives me the results. I look at it and then I start, he's saying, hey, change this, hey, change that. And as it makes the changes, I have my second screen over here where I'm doing my current task I'm focusing on. So it's kind of like a sidebar that I'm running. And I can just kind of keep tweaking it to where I want. And it makes sense, right? Data is always nuanced. There's issues that come up that are harder to kind of like in it, like a more of a static dashboard, like a maybe you have a Looker dashboard that's connected to like a Looker data set that BI engineering has configured in a certain way. And what you do is you export into a spreadsheet and try to build it, and then maybe you have to do some custom joins, whatever it is. It becomes very like it's a fun to do, but it's a very different workflow as opposed to this where like you have all the data sent to this one LLM, and then you can really interact with it and kind of visually communicate these nuances and trends. Like another thing I've recently was like, an event issue occurred with a client, and essentially that week of data or that 3 to 4 days of data was had to get thrown out. So now when I'm trying to do like a chart over time, I can just ask it to like, hey, just remove those visually from the chart because it throws off the data. It's not to like pretend that didn't happen. It's just to be like, hey, for us to understand what the actual trend is, we need to like exclude these 3 to 4 days to so we understand what's actually going on. It's not confused by that event hiccup, right? So that's just another example. Here's a couple of others that I've done. Here's one that's specific to Meta. This one's really cool. It's basically um, I need to understand when creative fatigue is happening. 7 day static look back hides more recent creative fatigue that could happen. Again, this is on higher spending accounts. You're spending, 50K a day. Creative fatigue can quickly give you wasted spend, right? But I need to understand creative fatigue on a 7 day rolling and on a 3 day rolling to see how they're performing in that window in those windows of time. So I can make decisions faster than and not miss ads that could be spending money and could be wasted spend. So this is kind of ad health checker. This is a saved artifact, and I'll show you guys how to do it. But I just run it, and it'll tell me like if I need to make a decision, if something needs to be monitored. It's a quick way for me to on a more complex account that's higher spending to really identify where I need to make changes manually and where I can kind of let things play out depending on what the performance is saying. This is another one. This is more of a static analysis. There's many you can do. I've done, full year analysis to find opportunities based on performance data, back-end performance data that I can then translate to like paid performance strategies. This is just a weekday analysis. I like to do this one generally because depending on the business, I found really high opportunity days. That's something can be done with. So this is a static analysis. And then the last one I have as an example is just more of a shorter time frame, 7 day window CPL performance trend that just kind of gives you trend. Again, there's a ceiling in here, and there's shorter forecasts in here just to be able to communicate more to the sales team in this case. I just like saying, hey, like sales, here's what you can expect volume wise and how to staff for that accordingly. So that's just another way that I've used it. So it's really infinite possibilities. I think the key is like, and I'll walk through this, is about building the templates that those are your baseline templates that you can run with. And then you can layer on all the nuance, all the context, all, this data is always moving. It's never straightforward. And this is the perfect way to interact with it, to communicate what's going on and to understand and uncover things that I could do as a performance marketer to really drive impact.